Hi everybody, my name is Andrew Gable. I have been creating and selling original stone carvings for the past 10 years, but have been practicing art for the last 25 years. I studied drawing and painting in art school, painted for a number of years, and found my way into stone carving about 10 years ago. So I'm just getting it on the table here, and I'm just cleaning it off because I want to see if there's any cracks, if there's any faults. That's an important part of the process. With this particular stone, I actually specifically selected it from the supplier where I get my stone to do this design of the mother with the cub resting on the back. So the stone already had some height, and I was quite intrigued by the color when I saw the stone sitting in the yard. I can get a sense of the color a lot of the times. I didn't actually know exactly what it was going to be like. I honestly didn't even know it was going to be green. That's just part of my creative process also. I like to leave some things up to chance, up to the unknown. And for me, I find that sometimes I don't need to know the color of the stone. I just get a feel for it, get a sense of the stone, and make a decision. Here I'm just testing the strength of the different parts of the stone. I sometimes like to do that just to get a feel for what I'm working with. Honestly, this is one of the coolest parts about working with stone, because this is how you actually form the relationship with the stone. This is what is exciting about stone carving. This is what is exciting about creating art. In this case, I'm working with this natural material, and I get to discover each stone every time, and every stone is so different. Okay, so I often start to refine and specify my carving process starting with the head, and as you can see, I'm establishing some of the really important relationships that are going to determine the size and shape of the rest of the carving, and that is the relationships in the head, in particular the distance between the eyebrows and the nose, and the eyebrows and the ears. So there's like these 3 points that are kind of used as a measuring system for the entire carving. But ultimately, I just look at the size of the stone, and I kind of get a feel for the head's got to be about this big for the rest of the bear to fit into this stone. Okay, check this out. I almost dropped this sculpture here when I was lifting the stone up to get it to eye level. I like to raise the sculpture so that I'm physically comfortable when I'm carving. And I typically will start a little larger and then slowly go smaller and smaller and smaller, because I find that's just easier. You can't really do the opposite because that goes against the laws of physics ultimately. It's also pretty cool sometimes when you get to see the bear head start to emerge from the stone. This one was also, I had to be a little more calculated because I knew I was going to have the cub on top. I had to really determine some key measurements and distances so that I could determine where to place the cub specifically in terms of the height and where I'm going to put the head. So that's why I'm refining the head on the adult bear a little more than I would have maybe before moving into the rest of the carving, because the more I can refine that head and get it down to that shape, those measurements are going to be more exact, and that's going to help determine where specifically I place the cub. I realize I'm saying the word determine a lot. I think that's just because I'm a determined human being. This design was a little more sophisticated than some of the other designs that I normally do, which was really fun. It was a great challenge, something I really wanted to do. It worked out, which is great. So these pieces require a lot of carving. They also require a lot of looking, just constantly looking at a piece from every angle to make sure all the angles are lining up, all the proportions are working. And that's one of the things that I've come to appreciate about sculpture and carving, is that it's sitting in your physical space. I mean, I don't know how the math works on this, but 360 degrees is a flat surface. So I think it's 360 times 360, and you have physical 3D space, but I'm just making this shit up right now. I don't really know. All I know is that I love the fact that I'm working with artwork where I have to consider all of the angles. When I paint and draw now, I actually appreciate the canvas and the structure that I'm painting on a lot more than I did before, because I've developed more of an appreciation for the physical components of art. Having done paintings, having done drawings, and now having done carvings and 3D work, you're not only getting a well-rounded appreciation of it, you're getting a well-rounded ability and skill level to create a more enriching and deeper artwork, I would hope. Now, getting into the cub, it was very similar as to when I was working on the mother bear, where I needed to establish a little more refinement in the relationships of the head before I could move on to the other parts of the body, because I just needed to make sure that these two bodies were going to line up. I can establish a nice relationship where this cub really feels like it's resting on the back of the mother. So yeah, it was really fun to sort of build this design because there was more elements. I had the mother bear and I also had the cub, and I was really curious to see the impact of the final design and how it would look in the end, because it was something new for me. And so it was really fun to sort of watch this one emerge and to watch the different characters of the two different bears and how they're going to relate to each other. But one of the things that I like to do is I like to build the shape. I like to build the form from the various references that I'm using. So there's really nothing that's like super predetermined here, other than the initial vision. I'm going to do the cub laying on the mother's back. Although I will say that one of the factors that I consider when I begin a carving is how it's actually going to sit in the collector's home. So for instance, with this piece, I like the idea of having the cub's head turn to one side and that there would be a primary angle that this sculpture would look really good when it's viewed from that angle. Now that's a consideration, but also rules are meant to be broken, and I always have flexibility to change and adapt as I go. A lot of the times you'll end up with angles that you didn't anticipate, and they'll end up being like your favorite parts of the carving. As much as you can plan to have a feature side, a feature angle, oftentimes I find there's angles that I didn't anticipate that look fantastic, and that's the beauty of carving. There's lots of different angles to look at, and it's really important to pay close attention to what you're doing and try and make sure it looks good from every side. So I like the idea of having the cub's head turn slightly and the mother's head kind of looking forward, because those features also start to form and shape a little bit of a story within the sculpture in terms of what's actually happening here. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I enjoy doing realism or pushing for those details, is because when that subject starts to come to life, a story will instantly start to form. And I find the more realism or life I can put into the carving, it's just that much easier for me to start connecting with these subjects on a real personal level where they become like part of my reality. I create so much footage around these artworks that it sometimes takes me a long time to finish the videos for these larger pieces. So this piece is actually officially in the gallery, which is really cool. It's important. It's part of the creative process, and I find when I move pieces from the studio into the gallery, it kind of opens up space in my environment and inside me at the same time, to sort of be ready to create new artworks and let new ideas in. If there's sort of a buildup that's happening where pieces are sort of accumulating and they're not going out into the gallery and then ultimately into people's homes, slows down my creative output. You know, it's funny, someone was asking me recently what tools I used, and if you'll notice in this video, I've actually got my tool set narrowed down to only a few tools. Like, I don't use a lot of different varieties of tools. I kind of have my go-to tools that I like to use, and I've got it sort of down to a very concise tool set. The tools is not really the thing that is going to make or break your work. Have you ever seen like a musician kind of pick up an old beat up guitar that's all out of tune and start playing it and just like make it sound absolutely incredible? Okay, here's a hockey analogy, because I am a Canadian stone carver and I actually really like hockey. I remember when I used to play hockey, I had this one friend that would always want to stop and tie his skates because they just weren't tight enough or they weren't tied correctly. Meanwhile, your other friend who barely has his skates tied on in the first place, they're hanging off his feet, is an absolute wizard because he's so passionate about what he's doing. He can't be bothered to worry about any of that stuff. Yeah, it helps to have the right tools for sure, but what is the underlining foundation you have as an artist, and what is going to really determine the work that you're creating? It's not really the tools, it's your creative expression, it's you, it's your take on things, it's your skill level that you've developed all these years. So yeah, don't get hung up on the tools. You can create beautiful work without the best tools in the world. This is how a stone carver unwinds at the end of a long work day. But anyways, getting into the sanding now, this is where I get to start to see the stone. Over the years, I've kind of gravitated towards adding specific features in, and I've also just come to understand what kind of works. I've learned what adds the most to a sculpture. So sometimes you can work on specific areas, and it doesn't really do anything, like it doesn't really add to the sculpture or the carving. But then there's other things, like for instance, that texture that I put in the neck, I find that just brings so much to the carving. And so I've sort of determined and realized like what to add and what I can leave out and what's not really necessary, and sort of layering these dimensions on top of each other that continue to add more and more and more to the carving so that it comes alive and feels alive and kind of just lands in the area and style and feel that I want as an artist. Wet sanding is really fun too. I don't often wet sand pieces, and what I'm testing here is if I wet sand, am I going to actually create a nicer finish? So it's all about, even at this stage, after 10 years and hundreds of carvings, I'm still experimenting during the whole process, refining and developing these techniques. The title of this piece is Unconditional, and I was kind of looking for a title for a while, and lo and behold, I bring it home and my wife comes up with the title, which she often does. It really embodied everything I wanted in a title and in a word to portray that relationship, that bond, that responsibility, even that like determination and that presence or beingness of a mother or a parent towards their child, where they would really do anything for them. They have that deep compassion that kind of emerges when you become a parent. So I thought the title Unconditional is absolutely perfect for this piece, and is definitely a word I like to live in my own life. So I could really connect with that word as well on a personal level. So with the applying the natural beeswax, as you can see here, I'm applying it with a blowtorch, and this is just pure natural beeswax that I'm melting on there. Turns out the stone was green. I didn't know that when I pulled it from the stone yard. Yeah, really satisfied with this piece. It's going to make a really nice feature in someone's home. It's one of the few designs that I've done. Well, so far it's really the only design of the cub on the mother's back. So I'm excited for the person who connects with this piece and is able to afford an investment like this. Obviously, these are large investments. So there it is. There you have it. There's the piece. I hope you all liked it. If you're interested in my work, just check out my bio. I have all of the links there. You can connect with me there. All right, I look forward to hearing from you guys, connecting with you all here online, and we'll see you in the next video.